G'day mate, 40 here, just listening to a charming little song called Don't Marry Me. I think it was by a group called the Beautiful South, and just a charming refrain to the song. Don't marry her, but F me, and F is fully enunciated. Now, there are quite a few traditional communities that would frown upon singing such a song. And if you wanted to celebrate and base your identity on singing songs that offend your community, you might have some social problems in that community. So, I largely live my life within Orthodox Judaism, and I've got a shocking announcement to share with you. Right? Jews are not perfectly observant of Jewish law. In fact, yours truly is not perfectly observant of Jewish law. But if you don't throw your violations in everybody's face, if you don't try to highlight or promote them, if you keep them quiet and on the down low, right, you're not going to get much pushback, because pretty much everyone is flawed in their approach to their religion. So being imperfect in your religious observance or intensity of belief is not going to get you isolated and estranged in your religious community unless you emphasize it, unless you say, hey, my identity is the opposite of what my community believes to be sacred and true. Which is why, from a trad perspective, the idea of identifying as a homosexual or any of the LGBTQ plus is just so offensive, bewildering, completely opposed to everything that traditional community holds sacred. Right? So Judaism understands that there are going to be men who have sexual interactions with men, and there are going to be people who commit acts of adultery and other sins. But the idea that you would base your entire identity on a major sin in your community is just bewilderingly offensive, horrific, just the opposite of all that those of us in trad communities hold sacred. And so I'm not surprised, I'm not bothered by every fair dinkum LGBTQ organization hates Christianity and hates Judaism, right? I'm not surprised, I'm not bothered that they regard the Pentateuch as a homophobic document, because pretty much every book of the Pentateuch, there's a law, men should not lie with men. If not every book, it's a major focus of attention. Don't do this. And so, of course, a organization that promotes LGBTQ identity is going to be horrified by traditional Judaism, traditional Christianity, and the plain meaning of the Hebrew Bible. And I would assume also the plain meaning of the New Testament. So, people in trad communities, fall short of the ideals of their community. But you would make your desecration of the values and practices and rituals and sacred identities of your community, the opposite of that, the basis for your identity, right, is not going to get a positive reception in trad communities. So even in trad communities, people fall short of ideals. Right? People are people, they're fallible, they commit sins. But then when you go and base your identity on something that is frowned upon in your community, then you shouldn't expect to be celebrated in that community. Right? Most Orthodox Jews are not perfectly observant of Jewish law. Right? Most Orthodox Jews will be human, they'll be fallible, they'll fall short of what the tradition of Orthodox Judaism expects of them, and that's not going to result in ostracism unless they are publicly celebrating and identifying with that deviation. I am not meek and mild, gentle in spirit, and vanilla in all my tastes, but it's absolutely unfathomable to me to primarily identify in those areas that my community has very strict standards. Why would I choose to make my identity, right, the more shocking part of my oeuvre? And so I get it, right? LGBTQ celebration is the opposite of traditional approaches to Christianity, to Judaism, to sexual modesty, to heterosexual marriage. And so it's no surprise that both sides of this spectrum are going to have a great deal of hostility towards each other. So apparently major corporations are downgrading their celebration of things that the Trump administration opposes because Donald Trump won in a sharply divided country, right, a clear victory. And most of the things that the Trump administration are doing are broadly popular. So if you want to make public your identity as something that most Americans aren't down with, right, that's going to create isolation. Right, you may have a particular sense of joy, purpose, and meaning in doing something that most people find perverse, and you're not going to get major social pushback unless you publicize that aspect of your personality, right? Unless you make that an identity. So from the perspective of traditional Judaism, right, there's no such identity category as homosexual. Right? It's as bizarre as someone making their identity adulterer or pederast or someone who likes intimate relations with animals. Right? I think both traditional Judaism and traditional Christianity or traditional ways of life are fully acquainted with the polymorphous nature of male sexuality. And they recognize that people are flawed and not always going to live up to traditional standards of right and wrong. But once you make your identity based upon flaunting, desecrating traditional values, then you're going to arouse a great deal of opposition. So different people obviously have different hero systems, right? So if you have a heterosexual hero system that marriage is something that only can occur between a man and a woman, that the military should be a heterosexual institution, right? You're going to be put off by celebration of LGBTQ identity. And that corporate America is backing off on supporting, funding, identifying with, allying with gay pride events. It makes sense. Like, why would you as a corporation want to identify with something that many Americans find incredibly disturbing and profane and violating their most closely held values? Seems like incredibly perverse and self-destructive option for a major corporation to take on. And why would an individual want to make their identity based upon something that a large part of society finds disturbing? Right? I'm not out there telling people things that about myself in general when I first meet them that are broadly offensive. Right? Often I'll meet people in LA and they'll just start saying the most gross put-downs of Donald Trump, just assuming that I'm anti-Trump because I live in LA. Like, it's absurd. Right? Why would you want to broadcast something that many of the people around you are going to absolutely hate, loathe, and find repulsive? Okay, let's look at the chart. Okay, I'm walking beside Beverly Hills, taking a walk high from Poland, about to go walking in the snow. Beautiful. Cue the Bee Gees, Travolta walking New York City clip, clouds in the sky, head on a swivel. Hello from Rome. When Luke was a kid, others made paper airplanes. Luke made paper airports. So, I get making an identity out of your hobby. Let's say you're a windsurfer, or you enjoy jumping out of airplanes, or you enjoy extreme sports, right? There's no major part of society that is appalled by that. But even aside from traditional beliefs and religious beliefs, right, men naturally tend to become disturbed by like low levels of masculinity or by any LGBTQ identification, right? There's some natural disturbance in many a male psyche. And so why would you want to go through life emphasizing your identity that so many people around you find disturbing? And yeah, if you're Jewish and you choose to live in a community where simply identifying as a Jew is considered reprehensible, why would you live there? Why would you not move? If you're a religious Christian and it seems like everyone around you mocks that, why would you not move somewhere where your identity is more acceptable? The notion that society should celebrate various forms of identity for which there is a religious objection, a traditional objection, and frequently just a widespread human rejection seems to be an incredible exercise in self-destruction. So I don't know why corporate America would want to fund that and celebrate that and go, oh, yay, let's have more of that. Let's have more people proudly, publicly identifying in an identity that causes many of those around them to tune out and feel repugnance. So, yeah, why on earth would corporate America fund that, identify with that, celebrate that, announce on their webpage, hey, we're a proud supporter of this identity that so many Americans find repugnant?